Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Paola, and we have a very special guest today, returning champion author Racquel Marie.
Hello, I'm back once again.
Yes, and we are celebrating slash anticipating the This Is Me Trying paperback. I
Yes.
mean, gorgeous, floppy, with
hmm
bonus material.
Yes.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the book and what we can expect in the paperback edition?
Yes, I can. This is me trying. It comes out on April 14th, 2026, in the paperback. And it is a YA contemporary told in dual POV about Beatriz and Santiago, who are estranged childhood best friends who have not seen each other in several years since the funeral of their mutual best friend, who they were both in love with. And the book starts at the start of their senior year when Santiago moves back to their small town in Vermont. And it follows the course of their senior year as they begin to reconnect with each other, try to forgive themselves, forgive each other, and figure out ways to deal with their grief, their guilt, and their mental illnesses. And then the bonus paperback content is that we will get text messages that Beatriz sent Santiago over the years they were apart that he did not respond to, which is a big part of their tension. And also the notes that Santiago wrote to himself that he wanted to send to Beatriz but did not send to her. So it was very angsty and yearning and messy to get to write those. And it was fun to get to revisit these characters after some time away from them. So I'm very excited for people to pick up the paperback for the bonus content because it was a lot of fun for me to get to add that into the story.
I love that angstiness, the text messages and the notes. I feel like they're parallels to the you didn't read my letters. What letters? I didn't get your
Yes,
letters.
yes. And I love that trope of like what was not
Yes.
said. And so that was I liked being able to give people insight into what Beatrice was saying over all these years because when we meet her, she's a very angry person. She's very angry at him. She's very closed off, and you get a little sneak peek into who she was prior to these years of that building resentment, but also the like you never got my letters, that Santiago had all these things he wanted to say, but he never sent them. And so we get to see kind of the headspace he was in for all those years as he was dealing with the guilt of not accepting this person reaching out to him. So very, very angsty.
Yes, I love that too. Speaking of the different editions, you narrate the audiobook.
Yes.
So, what was that experience like, and how was that different from quote unquote just writing the book?
Yeah, it was very fun for me. So I did not do Ophelia or You Don't Have a Shot's audiobooks. I had no interest in it. And I think because this was a book I had started writing when I was so young, I started writing it when I was like 14 years old. And it started out with me like pretending to be the characters that I'd always felt very related to Beatrice. I'd always sort of pictured my voice as her voice. And she's probably the character of mine that I like look the most similar to in some ways. She's like over 6 feet tall, so that's not the same. But I just always felt this connection to the character. And I, for a while, thought about what it would be like to narrate the audiobook. And so when it came time for us to discuss that, I told my agent and my editor, because that was like, I had to tell them that I was interested in auditioning, but I did not tell anybody else. And I'm a huge yapper. I am a huge oversharer. So I did not tell anybody in my life. And then once it was getting close to the production, they asked me to send an audition, and I recorded probably 30 plus versions. They just said they needed like 2 minutes of me reading without any mistakes, and it could be anywhere in the book I wanted. And I just kept messing up, or I didn't like the way it sounded, or all this stuff. And I was with my friends then, and I needed to turn it in that afternoon. And so I told them, I lied and said I needed to send something to my publisher, which wasn't untrue. And then I went into the car, I recorded it in one go, and I read the last chapter of the book, which is Beatrice's point of view, and then just sent it out. I like listened to it like one time and then I just sent it. And they ended up giving it to me. A lot of people don't know if authors do their own audiobooks, you still have to audition for it, and they can still say no. That I know people that have been turned down for their own audiobooks. And so I was really excited that I got it. I was only going to be doing Beatrice's point of views, which kind of made it easier to start off with this being my first experience because I was only going to have to do half of the book. And then when I went in to record it was also funny because the engineer, who was lovely, did not know I was the author and did not know I'd never done this before. So I got in there day one and he was like, all right, we're just going to set up and then you can get started. And I had to say, like, I actually don't know what I'm doing at all, kind of. I wrote this and this is my first time doing it. So it ended up being a really fun experience. That's why I ended up asking to do, or they asked if I was interested in doing If We Survive This, because Recorded Books is the one who's done all of my audiobooks. And so it was the same team of people. and I enjoyed it. So I continued to do it. I will probably continue to do it, but I really loved that experience, and it ended up really heightening the sort of entire publication journey. When you're saying like the difference of writing it versus performing it, I did have to actually think about some choices I hadn't thought about as much when I didn't put like a dialogue tag, or I didn't, emphasize exactly what tone of voice a character was having in the story. I then had to make the choice of how I was going to say that dialogue. What is this character feeling? Is it more anger? Is it more sadness? Is their voice breaking? I had to make choices that I hadn't thought about as much when I was writing the book. And so that was fun to kind of get to decide what liberties I wanted to make with the character and what kind of interpretations I wanted to make, because even though I'm the author, was also then kind of experiencing the book as a reader of like, how would I interpret this if I was just reading it? So it was very, very fun for me. And it did force me to do something authors hate to do, which is read my book after it had been finalized as well. I was like, I always say once it's published, it's not my business. And then I now have to read the final versions of my books. So I sort of played myself in that regard, but I really loved it. So that was really, really fun for me, and a very rewarding, unique experience that heightened the entire publication process.
I mean, the book is so like emotional. It's quite the hard-hitting contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine it adding to your experience, and it definitely adds as a listener experience.
Mm.
Yeah, Macmillan, what are you doing? Please make them available for Mexico. I had to get another audiobook app so that I could listen to This Is
Mm.
Me Trying. And that was fantastic. But it's not like if I want to buy it on Libro FM, I can't.
Yeah, I
Clearly,
don't know. I always feel bad when I hear from readers like internationally that want access to my books, because I like don't know how
yeah.
any of that. And so I'm always like, look, I also want it to be available for everybody, but
Yeah.
so I don't even know like the loopholes around some of this stuff. But it's always, at the very least, I always appreciate then knowing how many readers from different territories are
Yeah.
interested in accessing the book. But I wish that there was more I could do to be like, I also want it accessible to you. I promise if it was my
Yeah.
choice, I would make it happen.
What was it like writing for two POVs for the first time in This Is Me Trying?
Yeah, I mean, I loved getting to write in two point of views, and this book was such a challenge for me creatively because of that, that it made me, the book was so emotional for me as well, but the creative elements of it made me think that whatever I did next had to be really challenging, which is why then I wrote a zombie apocalypse horror novel in multiple timelines. For years, the book was always Beatrice's story. That again, this was a book I started writing when I was quite young, and so for so long, I always imagined it being her perspective and her insight. But there was so much about Santiago's life and his character that I knew I'd want to get into, and so I don't even know at what point that shifted, where I was like, this is both of their stories. And so Beatrice, it was easier for me to sort of slide into her headspace because I had spent so many years thinking about her. When I was younger, I sort of like idolized her as like tougher than me and cooler than me. So it was kind of funny then sitting down as someone who was older than her writing her. But also I've written like angry female main characters before. Like it wasn't that hard. Santiago, I was like, okay, how do I realistically make this sound like a 17-year-old bisexual boy and not a, how old was I at the time I was writing it? Like 23-year-old queer woman. Like I was like, I wanted to make a teenage boy that felt realistic, that still felt like true to his character. And so a big thing for me was realizing how many of my own like weird quirks in the way that I speak bleed into my characters. I speak in very long, like interrupting sentences, and I kind of ramble, and there's weird like sayings that I use and give to my characters. And so I realized I could not give both of them all of my quirks the way I could give like Ophelia or Valentina, because there's two point of views and they're just going to become indistinguishable from each other, which is not something I wanted. I wanted them to be distinct. So a big thing for me was deciding what the rules would be for how each of them would speak in both their dialogue and in their internal narration. And so Beatrice speaks in much more like kind of short, kind of clipped sentences. She's a lot more of like, if she has to list three things, she would list it as like this period and this period and this, versus Santiago will be much ramblier and ongoing, lots of commas and semicolons and this and that. And that's how they talk, and also how they talk in their head. And then I was able to decide at what moments I would shift those things, because it would make it more effective of like, what are the rules and when am I going to break them? And so then when Beatrice is going through really emotional moments or there's a lot of turmoil, then she became a lot more rambly. And so then you can see a difference in like, oh, she's been holding herself back and now everything is falling loose and it's uncontrollable for her, versus Santiago is always kind of all over the place because he's just like running and bopping away from his feelings at all times. And so then when he has moments of emotional turmoil, it's much more grounded and it's kind of weighing him down. And now sentences are shorter and they're more abrupt. And so that really helped me a lot with figuring out how each of them would talk, because I was suddenly paying attention to punctuation in a way I hadn't before, as far as like how it functions for character, very particular word choices. And then there were certain quirky things that I would give both of them, because these are two people that grew up together and they grew up in the same place and they were around each other's families. The way that they speak would influence each other and it would be like a connecting point for them. So it was really, really fun for me to get into all of that, because it was almost like I was stretching out new muscles in my writing that I hadn't had to focus on as much with my other characters, because this was now a thing of necessity. Is otherwise the book was just going to sound like two exactly the same characters when these are very fundamentally different people. So I had a really good time, and it ended up making me realize that I am a lot more similar to Santiago than I thought I was, because I had to start figuring out like, okay, what are the relatable things? Because I can't make it like Beatrice, my most perfect favorite child in the world, and then like this guy. Because I love Santiago too. And so it helped me connect with both of them.
I also really love the mental illness and slash health representation of it with Beatrice's depression and also Santi's OCD. So can you tell me a little bit about how that also informs the way that they, go about their story together?
I think for Beatrice, with her journey with depression, she is sort of a character who has grown up feeling very guilty about existing, which is a theme with my characters. But she was born to, her mom was a teenage mom, and her father died before she was even born. And so she has sort of spent her whole life feeling like she needs to apologize for the fact that she is like in the room and in the space. And so you see when she is reflecting back on when she is younger, but even in the present time, that she almost feels like she hasn't earned the right to be depressed, that with everything that she's gone through, everyone else has had it more difficult, or like, I just need to suck it up. And I think that's a common thing for people who deal with mental illness in general. But I think nichely, I wanted to get into the experience of people where if your mental illness manifests in a way that's maybe not always as obvious to other people, or it doesn't present as difficult on the outside for other people, because it can create this kind of comparison game of like, well, it's not as bad as that person, so like I should just suck it up. And I think for Beatrice growing up with her ex-boyfriend Bryce, who's the character who had passed away, with his mental illness being so debilitating for him and his journey with depression being a thing that she sort of took upon herself at a young age, that she needed to like fix that, and that it was her responsibility to fix it. It's harder for her then in the aftermath to think like anything that she is feeling, it warrants a discussion or comfort, that she feels so guilty about the fact that he died and so guilty about the fact she exists. She's almost like, I haven't even earned the right to feel guilty about any of this. And so that was an interesting thing to kind of play into, because she presents to everybody else as an extremely angry character. And she's almost this caricature of, she's goth, she's a loner, she's mad at everyone all the time. Like, she's the cliche of, oh yeah, she's going through something, but she refuses to let anybody actually see the vulnerability between that. It reminds me of people often expecting certain people to always be angry instead of ever being sad or hurt. And she is ultimately a character who's very hurt and very sad, but she doesn't feel like she has a right to do that. So she's like, well, I guess it'll come out in anger, and pushing anybody who tries to be friendly with me away. And so then with Santiago, he is a character who, again, presents extremely like differently than what he is actually feeling. He presents as super happy-go-lucky. He is super sociable with people. He is extroverted. And for years, he was away in a totally different town with a totally separate life from all of this, where he kind of didn't have to be the guy whose best friend died by suicide. He can be whoever he wants to be. And now that he's back here, he is faced with the fact that like, this is who he is and who everyone knows he is. And so regardless of how he acts, everybody knows the worst thing that ever happened to him. And how does he overcompensate for that then? And for him, he struggles really immensely with the same anxious guilt that Beatrice does, but also with OCD. And he is really obsessed with this idea that if he does something wrong, it's going to result in something bad happening. And in a way, he did something wrong. He got in a fight with his friend, and then his friend died. And so in his mind, he's like, yep, it's my fault that bad things happen in the world. And so he refuses to let anybody see the things that he's going through as well. But instead of like Beatrice then presenting as super angry and standoffish and pushing anybody away so no one even tries to get close enough to see what's happening, he's like, everybody come on in, I'm best friends with everybody, I'm super great, I'm totally fine, I promise there is nothing wrong here. They're on opposite sides of the same coin, with really struggling with mental health and really struggling with the guilt of their grief, building on that, but presenting it to the world in two completely different ways, both of which, to protect themselves from having to admit it, to anybody, but also so that nobody dares comfort them and acknowledge the fact that maybe what they're going through is difficult and warrants some type of comfort, because neither of them feel like they deserve it. And especially with Santiago writing OCD representation, which has now become more of a thing, more of a theme in my works. I never thought I would write about OCD at all because I deal with OCD, and I was like, we're never going to tell anybody about this. And when I needed to find a way to connect to him the way I connected to Beatrice, I just started writing him having OCD. And I had to lie to myself and say that I would cut it out of the book, because I was like, I'm not going to keep it in. It's just for right now so I can connect with him. I don't want to write about OCD. I don't want people to know, like, assume I have OCD. I don't want any of that to build. And I just had to keep lying to myself. And then the book came out and he had OCD, and then I'm talking about it. And then I wrote another book about OCD. So it was like, okay, so we're just talking about having OCD now. I think that was important as well, because Santiago is someone who deals with a lot of shame about it. And so it was forcing me to connect with him, because it forced me to go through the discomfort of acknowledging that there was a lot of shame for me with it too. So I really loved getting to write about that for them. And that has been probably the most rewarding part of people's reception to the book, is anyone who relates to the journeys that either of them were going through, because those were things I dealt with myself. And so hearing that that could help anybody else or make them feel less alone is like the most rewarding, most important part about being an author for me.
I feel like I always say this, but if I don't, then now you know. I really love your ensemble casts. Big shout out to Whitney and Olive, my kids. I love them so much. But well, your kids, but my
they're a shared collective.
yeah, exactly. So how do you go about like creating secondary characters? And you created so many for this one, like Santiago's grandpa, his entire home life, Beatrice's home life, and her own family history.
Yeah, I think I love writing ensemble cast, and I love when people acknowledge that, because most of my books nowadays I have to cut people like pretty early on, where I'm like, I'm writing way too many people. But I come from a big family, being Latina on one side and Irish American on the other side. It's like a lot of people, genetically engineered to have a large family. And I also have a lot of friends. I'm an extremely social person. I'm a very extroverted person. And for me, I'm like, I can never have too many friends. And so my life is full of a lot of very like rich characters and a lot of people who heavily influence how I go about my life. So it's hard for me, even when I was younger, this maybe sounds so annoying, but when I would read like YA or watch a TV show and I'm like, this person has one friend, like, and that sounds like mean because I'm not being like judgmental, but it was hard for me to conceptualize, where I was like, I have so many people in my life where even if it's not like I'm like Miss Popular, but like I always just knew a lot of people that were part of my life. And so when I'm writing books, it's hard for me to not be like, we need like 27 people to fill out this room. But also that for me, it's very important that the background characters in my books never feel like cardboard cutouts. They never feel like set dressing. And especially because a lot of the background characters in my books tend to be, like in my real life, people of color, queer people, trans people, that I never wanted to feel like I'm like setting up like, here's my diversity prop set of like characters, because I think it's obvious when you are encountering media and it feels like somebody is trying to get like a checklist, and that's not me being like critical, oh, diversity, wokeness. That's me like, you can see a lack of authenticity when people are more concerned with the optics of presenting like a diverse cast, or here are other people, but not getting into those people feeling like actual human beings, and not considering the optics of like, what it would be like if all of those, if you have a diverse cast, but if all those people feel like flat people, they're caricatures, they only exist to suit the main character's motives and narrative, it just feels weird. It feels inauthentic. And so for me, it's basically just that I want to write books that feel like reflections of my life in some way, not always, but the cast of characters around my characters are reflective of the cast of people in my life. And so it's even fun for me when my friends are reading my books and there's a side character that's like from their ethnic background or has the same sexuality as them or something, because the world I exist in is one in which there are a bunch of people in it. So it's my books are going to reflect that. But also I love the idea in my books that if like, as if we're playing Sims and you had to like switch the character you're in control of right now, if we have to jump into, like in this book, suddenly Whitney's point of view, or we have to jump into Olive's point of view, Dustin's point of view, Beatrice's mom, Santiago's abuelo, even Santiago's father, that there's enough information there that we could suddenly be in a new story, that the background characters are dealing with their own arcs, that Whitney is dealing with her own arc of dealing with her grief and having lost her stepbrother and watching two people she was close with now bond with each other and ignore her. Olive's dealing with their own arc of having a crush on this boy who's returned to town, but knowing that they're always kind of going to be on the outskirts of this like breakfast club of grief. Dustin dealing with his relationship, Beatrice's mom watching her daughter have to deal with the same grief she dealt with as a teenager.
This next most likely thing that we did with You Don't Have a Shot and with Ophelia After All is more so inspired by the small town life. I don't know what it's like to live in a small town, so I had to look it up, like stereotypes of it. And so this is from Things People who have lived in a small town Understand by Eva Hate, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who is most likely to get featured in the local paper.
Beatrice would probably do something that would warrant it, like some type of scholarship or like academic achievement, but be like the one who least wants it. So I feel like Whitney, actually, of all the characters, Whitney, because she's the one who's like into extracurriculars, she's super socially active and very educational. So Beatrice would be like the sleeper pick for it, but I feel like Whitney's the one to be like, yeah, I want to be in the paper and I need that for my college applications.
Maybe both at the same time.
Hey.
Who's most likely to open/perform at the first drag bar in town?
I feel like Santiago for some reason, because he's extremely extroverted and down for like a good time. And he also is a character that when this book came out, people were unsure if this was a girl on the cover. And I feel like, again, he's like a queer teenage boy written by a queer young adult woman. And so I feel like he is super chill with like gender, performance, flexibility. He's in with the queerness. And so I think he would be super down to do that.
Who's most likely to know everyone's secrets?
Olive. I think people underestimate a quiet, shy person in a room. Yeah. And I'm not even like a shy person or a quiet person, but people sometimes just start telling you stuff if they think that you're like kind of quiet. And there are social situations where if I'm like a little more timid, people just start like telling me literally anything. I do think Olive is the one and Olive kind of does know everyone's secrets, kind of where by the end of the book, they're like, you all need to deal with so much stuff. And this is like not really my problem. And younger siblings, as a younger sibling myself, I think you get so much information about people just by having older siblings already like out there in the world collecting information for you.
Who's most likely to be the quickest running errands?
Probably Beatrice, because she's very no nonsense. She's very organized and meticulous. And she's also like, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to do all this. Like, let me get in and out.
Who's most likely to have the biggest culture shock when they go to college?
I feel like it's going to be Beatrice because she has grown up in this small town her entire life. She's never really gone outside of it. She's the only one of the main like teen characters that is, I guess, Dustin, but like hasn't lived anywhere else and has also kind of always had like the same like 3 friends, like doesn't really talk to anyone. So I think being in a different area and suddenly in a populated area and socializing, it's probably going to be strange for her to be like, oh my gosh, there's people here. I think it's going to be more the cultural shift of there's so much noise and so many people around me all of a sudden, and I'm used to being able to just kind of like disappear into the onto the roof of my house where nobody is here in the middle of nowhere, Vermont. So I think that'll be her.
Who's most likely to survive at the end of a horror film or novel? Like if we survive this.
Ooh, it's either gonna be Beatrice or Santiago, which obviously are like easy pick. One of the 2 main characters. They're both very tall. And I think Beatrice would do a good strategy of similar to kind of if we survive this flora of like tucking herself away separate from other people and kind of just hunkering down. Santiago would be like, he's an extremely social person. I think he would be much more like helping other people, being involved. So that's where I'm like, he could die because he'd be like putting himself out there. But I also think Beatrice would be. It's just that she would like, it would be harder for her to get herself in that situation in the first place. She'd be like, I'm going to stay completely away from everybody else. Santiago would like actively be going out trying to save people, I think. So I think either of them have like a pretty good chance of it. And Beatrice also is wearing like spikes and scary looking stuff all the time. So she just kind of has like naturally built-in weaponry in her wardrobe.
Yes, she'd be very intimidating. Yeah. Okay, so do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Anything else that you want to plug?
Oh, yes. So it's great because I've just announced this, that my next book is coming out in 2027. I don't have a release date yet, and there's no pre-order links up yet. However, it is called A Different Kind of Murder. It is another YA horror novel. Like If You Survive This, it's a contemporary horror novel, and it is about a teenage girl. I can even give the name. I haven't said the name anywhere. Her name is Paloma. which is very similar to Paula. And she is an anxious, very shy, bird loving girl. And at the start of her senior year, she begins to realize that her local murder of crows are acting upon the intrusive thoughts that she wrote in her journal. And she needs to figure out why that is happening and how to stop it, as violence and danger erupts around her based on her intrusive thoughts. And her close little crow friends are now doing this. So it is a weird book. It's very fun for me to work on. It's not a fun book, but it's a very fun book for me to write. It feels like really comparable to This Is Me Trying, with a lot of like the mental health discussion, and it's sort of more grounded than If We Survive This, but very similar to If We Survive This in some of the spookier, scarier elements of it. But I'm having a really good time with it. I think it's going to be very fun. And I'm excited for people to get to read it. And I'm excited to get to be able to share that I'm writing more mental health horror novels.
Nice. I love that. I am so excited. I miss omens in life and in books,
Mm,
and a different kind of murder, the murder of crows, the crows
yeah.
acting. Oh, layers, layers, layers. I love that. I am so pumped. I love the Racquel Marie literary universe. Thank you for writing. Thank you for continuing to write. Very excited about This Is Me Trying bonus material in the paperback.
Mm-hmm.
So people at home, don't forget to check the description below for a link to pre-order the book. Please get it. It is so, so worth your time. That's a Paula guarantee.
Thank
Culture
you.
maker. So thank you, Rocky, for being here
Of
once
course.
again. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you haven't already and you'd like to, go ahead and hit subscribe, and we will see you for Rocky's next book.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.